Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? It's your boy Tank Davis hosting today's Art of Storytelling. And today we got Miss Sherri, G Mama, yes ma'am, mother of many, raised a lot of young folks on the east side. She has definitely raised myself here. Definitely been a part of my life for some years. Glad to see you again, ma'am.
Good to see you.
Definitely. Definitely want to hear your story and what gave you G Mama, mother of many, what you've done for the community and everything, just everything about you. So we'll get started with you telling your story.
Okay, I am Sherri Landrum, of course. As I said, mother of many. I have 9 of my own and 19 grandchildren, besides all my other kids, which is about 30, I would say. But I grew up on the east side of Denver and born and raised here in Colorado. I don't know where you guys want me to start with my story, but I do a lot of activist work for nonviolence for particular reasons. I had a daughter that was shot, still here, living today, thank God. My son was killed in 2004 at the Bluebird Theater. And then I also had a son who was shot by Denver PD. In 2015. So there's a lot, and then I've had 2 son-in-laws and plus my husband killed to gun violence. So there's a lot to my story, trust me, if anybody knows. However, I think the biggest story for me is when my son was killed in 2004. I didn't give up hope that his killer ran for 10 years. And I didn't give up hope. I actually did a lot of the investigation myself, simply because the police department wasn't doing enough for me. In my eyes, their investigation went from one end of the scale to the other. And with them telling me, you know, my son's killer was killed by one of my family members in California, where I got on a plane myself to make sure that that was not true, and it wasn't true. And then doing a lot of the investigation myself with my son's case, I had to learn to forgive. And that is my biggest push when people are going through this back and forth with, you know, having to deal with people and people taking people's lives. There's more than one side to this story. And I always say this, more than one side to this story means you have a perpetrator and you have a victim. And then you have in between those families. And so my thing is, you have to look at both sides of this, because you cannot think that every person that puts a gun to somebody else's and takes their lives is a monster. And I know I get a lot of lack about this, because I totally look at this view in a totally different manner, simply because forgiving is the biggest key to your living. You can't live unless you forgive. And I say that simply because in order for me to move on and not stay stuck in 2004 where my son was killed, I had to forgive his perpetrator. And being that I had forgiven him, I was able to do the work that I needed to do. In 2012, I finally got it put on America's Most Wanted, where I got to meet John Walsh. He came here, he did. Kurt's story was the very last story on America's Most Wanted before they took it off the air. And that experience alone gave me that much more push to do what I needed to do, to be a voice for these victims, but to also be a voice for these perpetrators who are doing this. And I went to, in 2017, I went to the prison and met with my son's killer. And I could not have done that unless I was had that forgiving heart to do what I needed to do. And come to find out, this young man was going through the same thing my son went through. He actually had just did a tour in Afghanistan and had just come back when he came to Colorado and ended up killing Kurt. But you know, just the nicest young man. And I got I got a lot of lashback from family members and my children, especially because I have this forgiving heart, and I believe you cannot live unless you forgive. And you have to be able to do just that, forgive, in order for you to be able to live your life in a manner of not being, because when you hold a grudge against somebody, I just need to say this, when you hold a grudge against someone, you're not hurting them, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself more than you're hurting them, because they don't see this grudge that you have against them. They don't see, but you see it. And for you to be able to live a life happily and peacefully, that's what you would have to do. You'd have to forgive the people that have done so much to you, and moreover, forgive yourself, because you put yourself through a lot of stuff. That whether you want to face that or not, a lot of people put their self through a lot of mess. But if God is willing to forgive you on a daily basis, who are you to be bigger than God and not forgive somebody that has done something to you? But you know, my story goes on and on because I have so many mothers that I really try to be there for comfort, because I don't see death the same way other people do. And I have to be there for comfort, but I also have to watch my words, because a lot of people don't look at death the way I do, because I don't consider it a loss. It's actually a gain, because to be absent from the body is to be present with God. And I look at death a totally different way than other people look at it. But it is, you know, I think God gave me that ministry to be able to help push these people through and have that peace of mind that they need in order to get through their grieving process and all of that. But my biggest thing is you have to forgive in order to live. You cannot do it. And it's very hard. I've found in the past, just dealing with other people and dealing with these mothers and families and things like that, and they look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, what? Forgive who? You? I can't do that right now. But my thing is, if God forgives you daily, what gives you the right to say I can't forgive somebody? But you know, that's just how life goes, and a lot of people don't see it the way I do. So
Yes. Hold on. Yeah, I was gonna address the question right now. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. You know, right where you are right now is showing the strength. What made up that strength? Where did you come from? Who raised you? Was your dad around? Who was your mom? How did you avoid? You know, and the thing is too. One more question. You know, with the you know, you was around on the east side in the late '80s, early '90s. How did you avoid, you know, crack? How did you avoid? Because I know a lot of mothers got scooped up into that. That's how you and I became one. You know, so how did you avoid that whole epidemic?
The first question is, I was raised by, I have a very close-knit family. And, you know, I had a tendency to cling more to my elders than I did, you know, my generation. And just watching them and the way they molded me and the way they did things in life and the way that they had a heart full of gold. That's just the way to describe my family members. But my grandmother and my mom were my biggest influence, I think, because they never smoked around me. They never drank around me. The reason I never, and it's a power of the mind, to be honest with you. It's a choice. You choose. I don't care what nobody says, and I know I'm gonna get some lack for this, Phil, but you choose to do those drugs. You can get the help you need, but it's up to you on your inner me. Your enemy is your enemy is your biggest enemy. And you cannot survive if you don't make the choice to say, okay, I can't do this. But I had so many family members that were alcoholics and drug addicts. And I chose not to do that because that was not a life that I wanted. That was not a life I wanted my kids to see me live. And just dealing with all the kids on the east side and dealing with their moms being drug addicts and alcoholics. And I never held that against those mothers, because sometimes life can get you so bogged down that you don't know which direction to go into. And that's the direction they chose to go into. But I never downed them for that, because moreover, I prayed for them. And that was because of the strength that I had. In raising 9 children, it's like I don't want my children to see me go down that route, which it was just something God gave me to say, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to go that route. You're not going to, never tried it, never wanted to, but it was just me being raised in a church and, watching my grandmother especially do the things that she did in her life that gave me the influence to put me where I am today.
I have 2 questions too. When your son first died, how did that break or make your family? Like your other children, his grandmother, his aunties and uncles, like what was the family going through that you had to hold strong to bring everyone together? Like what was the experience that you seen the family go through? What were you going through? Just everything that was going through with your life and family's life after the death.
After Kurt was killed, I have to put it this way. For 2 days straight, I was angry. I was upset. I didn't know what direction I wanted to go into. And I looked at my other children, because my other children, Kurt was like a father to my other children because he was the oldest boy up under my daughter, Giselle, your auntie. But he was the oldest of the second of 9. So he was more like a father figure to my kids. And so when Kurt was taken, it literally broke my family. There was things that I had to figure out what to do, and ended up taking them to Judy's house. And I pushed that particular program because they helped me and my children so much more over me than my kids, because my kids still have that, they still don't have the peace, even though this young man has been caught, even though he's spending time in jail. They still don't have the peace that they need. And that biggest thing, I'm glad you asked that question, is because they can't forgive. And you will go through the hell that you go through. You will stay stuck back in that day and time until you learn to forgive. And I promise you, I can't express that enough. But 2 days I had these feelings of, I didn't know what to do, because he was like my right-hand man. He was there for football games. He was going to the kids' school, making sure homework was getting done, everything. So it took a big part of me. And let me express this before I go any further with this story. 7 days before Kurt was killed, God gave me a vision. And it was that one of my children would be hurt, and be hurt very bad. I didn't think it was death. I had no idea what it was, but my feeling was it's not going to be Kurt, because he's never into no mess. He's never, he doesn't cause problems, and everybody loves him. And so I never in a million years would have thought it would have been Kurt. I would have thought it was my oldest daughter, because she was the one that was really out there, with the streets and doing things in the streets that, I just thought it would be her. But when God gave me this vision, I told my kids, I bought them on the front porch of Fillmore Street, and I told them, everybody knows 34th and Fillmore if you know me. And so I told I told them that something was going to happen to my kids. So just be careful and tread lightly. You know, don't go out partying. Um, don't do things that you normally do, because I had this vision. Um, so with God showing me that, I think it was more over me being able to deal with it in a better manner, because I had that feeling before it happened. And 2 days, I was still angry. I was very angry. I was mad at God. I was mad at everybody around me. I was mad at, the police department, especially, because the hell we went through after Kurt died. They came in, raided my house. I'm like, we're the victims here. Why are you raiding my house? This man shot my son. He doesn't even live in Colorado. So I was angry, just angry, angry. And I went into my room and I was praying. And in my prayer, God showed me I gave my only son, why not yours? Because I asked him why a million times. And people say you're not supposed to ask God why, but you won't get your answer unless you ask God why. So I'm here to tell you, yes, ask God all kind of questions, because you talk to him like he's your father, and you won't get an answer unless you ask first. And so when he showed me that, that day, that very day, 2 days after Kurt was killed, I forgave the young man that killed him, because God told me you have to forgive in order for me to be able to work and move through you.
Did you forgive him immediately?
Immediately, 2 days after Kurt was killed, I forgave him. Yeah. Yeah. So, he ran for 10 years, and in that courtroom, when they went to sentence him, I let everybody do their speaking. And when I got up there, my own speech was about forgiving, and how much, if I could give that young man a hug. See, they show all this stuff on TV about the young man that was killed and the brother hugging it. That happened long before that even happened, but they never showed it from Denver, Colorado, but and I asked the judge, I said, if I could, can I walk over and give that young man a hug and let him know he's forgiven? But she wouldn't let me. So that's where the process came. And I told his lawyer and the judge and the DA that I wanted to go up to the prisons to meet with this young man. So somebody put it in, put the process in motion so I could do that. So yeah.
Okay. I was saying, I definitely want to hear more about like how you grew up, where you grew up, and like just your childhood. How was your parents on you that pushed you to be the woman that you are today and that you were early on in your life? And definitely like, what were the life like experience growing up that you took to become G Mama, mother of many?
Like I said, I attribute a lot of that to my grandmother, because my mom was a working mom, and my mom was moreover pretty much she wasn't out of my life, but she was in my life, but she was working a lot. And so that took it for my grandmother to raise me. And my grandmother actually was a mom of all moms. She raised Wellington Webb's kids, and, Wellington and Wilma Webb's kids. And she was a babysitter at that time, and she would babysit all the kids in the neighborhood. And let me tell you, this woman had the heart of gold, but she did not play. Okay. So, just watching her and seeing how she was in raising all these children, and having a heart to just love on them and be there for them when their parents had to be those working parents, and those parents had to be gone most of the day until 6-7 o'clock in the evening time, until they picked them up, which we were some of those kids, me and my two brothers. And we actually lived right down the street from my grandmother, so it wasn't that hard. So we were pretty much in the house. And she would watch us during the day. And so just seeing my grandmother raise all of those children the way she did, it gave me an incentive to say, I can't turn any child away, because as I grew and had my own children, I saw the need for someone. It takes a village to raise a child. I don't care what nobody says. And I'm telling you, that whole 23rd and 24th block of High Street and Williams and Gilpin, those were our parents. They did not play. If you did something, they would whoop you and then take you to your parents themselves and have your parents whoop you. So we had a village, and you don't find that anymore, because people around nowadays are scared of their kids. They run from their children. They let their children talk back. But I'm gonna tell you now, I'm still old school, and you know this, Tank. If I see you doing wrong, I'm gonna pull you to the side and say, hey, no. But
Yes, ma'am.
and so that's how my raising came about, is all of these people on, the Moors and the Freelows and all of all the people, the Burlesons, all of those people did not play. The Ingrams, they were always in our tail end if we didn't do what we were supposed to do. So my raising, I can honestly say that those people showed true love to us. And look out, our teachers, our teachers at Whittier Elementary were some of the best teachers in the nation. And I can still brag on that, because once we, when I came up, we ended up having, that's when the busing came along, when we had to be bussed out, because our home school was Maury Middle School, Maury Junior High at that time. But we had to be bussed out to Byers because of the line. And so our teachers, even at Byers and Maury and Whittier, they helped raise us. I mean, we can honestly say that we had that influence. We had that positive influence in our life to get us to be where we wanted to be today, But my grandmother was probably the biggest influence in my life.
You said that you had lost your husband was killed to gun violence.
Yes.
How did you deal with that? Because I'm seeing a lot of parents, a lot of girlfriends, a lot of wives, boyfriends, husbands, and stuff is getting killed by the police. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with it? And what can you share in terms of somebody who experienced that? What can you share with them in terms of dealing with it?
To deal with that, and like I said, Phil, I keep God ahead of my life a lot, because I did go into a deep depression after that. It wasn't to a depression where I wanted to take my own life, because to me, you taking your own life is just it's a cop out. And I hate to say that, because I truly believe suicide is real. I truly believe I've been there. I've had those thoughts at a younger age. But to me, if you don't keep God first over your life, a lot of things go wrong. And I have to keep him ahead of my life, because when I went through the stage of my husband being killed, it wasn't a very good experience, being that his family totally blamed me for it, and it wasn't my fault. But I forgave them, because the things that you weren't even around the 4 years we built our house together. So, for you to come in and say that it's to blame someone else. Don't blame anybody else for a grown man's decision. Like I said, things are a choice. And if you make that choice and you make that wrong choice, you have to live with that choice. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. You reap what you sow. And you have to be able to overcome all of that. And you have to find your strength within, because if you don't find your strength within, there's so many people that can mess your head up. There's so many people that can mess your heart up, because you're not paying attention to what's coming at you. And when I say what's coming at you, in death, there's a lot of bad influence. There's a lot of bad things that happen. There's a lot of people that argue and fight, and which I don't understand, because what's that going to do? It's not going to bring that loved one back to you. It's not going to solve the death. It's not going to solve anything that happened with the death. So you arguing and bickering and fighting, with your loved ones that are still here that you have to deal with on a daily basis, unless you choose not to, that's your choice. But my thing is forgive them people and let them go, because they will find their way eventually. And if they don't find their way, then that's just pure, I want to say, holding a grudge and being, I don't even know what word to even use it with. That's pure evil. That's all I got to say. But I would say don't hold on to the grudge. And when you see people coming at you that want to fight with you in a death, let it go, because it happened with my dad too. You know, my sisters were not there when I had to make their arrangements, but you know, I did what I had to do, and they were upset about it. But you know, I forgave them. I walked out the door. I wasn't going to argue with them in the mortuary, and that's the wrong thing to do. Do not argue over your loved ones that have gone on, because that's something that's not going to give you peace, not going to give that person peace, and they can't feel it, they can't see it, they gone. So, but you know, you just have to keep God first in your life, because you're not going to be able to get over that hump if you don't. Uh-oh, can't hear you again.
Oh, I was saying that we had a question from Dede.
Yeah. How many of those East Side kids you seen grow up, you still deal with today?
Every last one of them. I tell you, even from the prisons to the streets to Facebook, through just other people's death, you know, they know me as Mama Sherri or Auntie Sherri. They know I don't play. Pull your pants up. I don't want to hear the N word. And even though you grown, I don't care. I will still pull you by your ear. Because that's how much respect I gained from all of these young people, because when their parents weren't there, there was a Sherri there. And that's not to brag or boast. It's just to say they had someone that they could turn to. They had someone that they could talk to. They had somewhere that they could go get a meal, you know, and they had somewhere that they could hang out, because my thing is I took them in because I didn't want to see them in the streets. And a lot of times my kids say, Mom, you're bringing too many kids in here. But they're all your friends. So why are you complaining about it? And I didn't play back then. It was, you don't say that, don't cuss in front of me, because you will not disrespect me. And it's still that way to this day. You will not say cuz, blood, none of that around me, because I despise that gang stuff. I am not for it. And I will tell you in a minute, I don't care how grown you get. And some of my, even one of the young men that was raised around my house, I've seen him not too long ago. And he's just now changing his life, thank God. But he told me, he said, Mama Sherri, if it wasn't for you, I would still be out there in the streets doing what I'm not supposed to do. He said, but you don't remember this, but a couple of years ago, when your son-in-law died, you pulled me to the side and you told me, give up that gang life, because you will be the one that will be burying next. And I did tell him that. I remember telling him that, but that's just how I am. I'm from the heart. I speak my mind, especially if I see you out here. If you over the age of 21, give up that gang life. It's not for you. Get a job. And especially if you have kids, take care of your kids, because my thing is, like I said, you reap what you sow, and what you're out there doing in them streets, it might not come back on you, but it could come back on your children. So you have to take the mind to say, enough is enough, and I better get myself together. And if you think you can't get out of that, that's a lie, because you have too many programs around here that will help you get out of that situation. And my house was one of those situations, because I couldn't see the kids out in the street, and I refused to have the kids out in the street when it came to me and my house.
What in terms of how did you keep them, like specifically the ones who's out there in the streets? who's out there gangbanging, who was out there affiliating stuff like that with that population, how did you keep them, you know, in the house?
It, you know, Phil, once they gravitated to me, it was all natural. And you know, it was probably me praying because I still pray to this day over a lot of the kids that grew up around my house, even though they're grown and have families of their own and doing well and got jobs. I still pray over, you know, and I still pray over people that you know, people that don't know I'm praying for them, I'm praying for them. And that's just me. I'm a prayer warrior. And to keep them at my house, it was just a gravitation because probably because I showed them respect and they respected me, but I showed them that I wasn't playing with them and that I cared, and the love that I had for my children, I had as well for them. Because if you coming in my house and you stand in my house, guess what? You're going to have a chore just like my children got a chore. Just say, if they got to clean up, you got to clean up too. If you doing something wrong, you're going to get your butt whooped just like they getting their butt whooped too. Because that's me, you know, but that was showing them the love that they needed to have at that time when their parents weren't around. So that was just, that's just me. So.
Indeed.
All right. Is there any more questions before I ask for you to continue your story? Hold on, let me see. No? Okay. Let's talk about your education.
Hold on, I got nah, never mind.
Oh, you got one?
Never mind.
Go ahead, ask it. Don't be ashamed.
All right, G-Mom, how many grandkids do you have in total?
Total, because I'm, you know, I count my stepkids and I count everybody else's kids, but biological grandkids, I have 19. If you count all my other kids, you probably stretching into the 50s, I promise you.
Okay.
All right, so I want to know about like your education. Where'd you go to school, and how was schooling for you when you were growing up, and how do you think it changed today?
Ooh, that's a good question. Now my education, I started off at Whittier Elementary. I went there from ECE to 6th grade. Then we were bused to Byers Junior High, and I went there from 6th grade. I mean, what is it? It wasn't 6th grade back then. It was 7th to 9th grade then. So that's how much it's changed. It was 7th to 9th grade in junior high back in my day. And then I started off at East High School. I went to East for 2 years, and then I transferred over to George for 2 years because I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't doing very well at East because everybody I knew in the neighborhood was going to East High School. So I figured, you know, I needed a change. And so I went to George Washington High School. And then 3 months before I was to graduate, I didn't have quite all my credits. I think I was like 5 short, but my mother had a nervous breakdown. So I dropped out of school to take care of her. And I missed my senior prom. I missed everything. But it was to take care of my mom. And I think that was more important to me. But I finally got my high school diploma from Emily Griffith Opportunity School. And then I went on to MA. I went to Concord to get my medical assistance associates. And then I actually went through a program called CWE. I went to CWE first. CWE, I got my IT, which is, you know, where you do technical stuff. I got my associates from there for IT, and then I went on to get my medical assistant associate from Concord. So.
And so have you been in like any of the school systems that you've went through before, and like have you watched how the students and the teachers interact and how they go throughout their day?
You mean in today's world?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because my grandkids, I'm very involved with not only my grandkids but other people's kids, because I work at a pediatric doctor's office. I've been here for 23 years. And, you know, just to go into these schools now, it is so different. I mean, some teachers care and some teachers don't. And moreover, some teachers don't care about these kids that are coming up today. And that's where I have to say, I draw the line, because I don't hold my tongue lightly, especially when it comes to kids' education. And I feel that it's important for these teachers to get to know these kids. And nowadays they don't get to know them. They're just there to get a paycheck, and they'll pass them just because they're there to get that paycheck, and not paying attention to the kids' demeanors, their needs. A lot of teachers don't pay attention to the kids' needs nowadays. And I think that's an important part of raising these kids, because like I said, our teachers were very much involved in our lives. I mean, they were. Now I have to give it to University Prep, the one down here on 29th and Arapahoe. I am very pleased with their program. They get involved with the kids. They text the parents. I can honestly say that I do agree with that program, but a lot of these other schools that I've been in, I see that it's just a job for these teachers. And to me, they need to make it a better environment for the kids' sake, because that's what you're there for. You're there to teach the kids. And a lot of these teachers are afraid of these kids, So when you're afraid of the child, how can you teach the child?
That's definitely a major key point. I don't know if there's any more questions, but
I got one. When you were growing up, what was it like dating? What was it like dating? Yeah, dating in high school or middle school. I don't know when you started. And
you shouldn't even ask me that question. I was a big tomboy. I was a huge tomboy. Okay, I wanted to play football and everything else, so it was hard for boys to get close to me, because I had two older brothers who, first off, didn't allow it, but second off, I beat them up because I was a tomboy. I didn't want to be around them. I wanted to play football with you. I didn't want to date you. So, it was, I don't think I started dating until I was maybe 16. And that relationship I didn't keep, because I was so into my basketball and volleyball that I just, it just didn't last. So I was a big tomboy.
What do you say about dating in terms like now to your children?
What do I say to them?
Yeah,
nowadays you can't even talk to your kids about dating. I tell you that right now. But for these young kids, wait. Please wait. I mean, it's okay to have that companion and all that stuff, but abstain from that sex stuff. You don't need that in your life right now when you 16 and under. Hello, even when you 16, not when you 18 and under, I should say, not 16, 18. Say no. It's easy. Say no. Because, where I work, I see a lot of, there's a lot of things that come through here, and these kids need to understand it ain't no joke in this world nowadays. I mean, everybody is going through it and is anxious and want to just, do what they do, and they need to stop. I mean, just say no. Get your education. Make them books your boyfriend and girlfriend. How about that?
Any more questions?
Can you repeat that for them? I don't think they heard you.
I'm so serious. Make them, my grandkids, they laugh at me because I tell them, make them books your best friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, because it ain't, you can have that companion, your best friend, because you need to make it your best friend before you even think about dating them in the first doggone place.
Yes.
Any more questions? Any more comments, compliments?
Thank you for sharing your story, Mama G.
Oh, there's more to it, but you know, time frame that we have, like I said, you have to put it in perspective of what should you share and what should you not share and how should you share it. But yeah, it's definitely a huge documentary. That's what my life is, a documentary.
Right.
If we didn't catch nothing this whole time while you was talking, what is one message that you want to leave us with?
Forgive. Learn to forgive, because you cannot live unless you forgive. And I promise you, there's so much peace in forgiving. There's so much there's more you can do when you forgive, because when you forgive those people that have come against you, that have hurt you, that have taken from you, that have wronged you, when you forgive those people, your attitude, your demeanor, your life, everything changes. And the reason that is because you're not holding on to that grudge, and you don't care what nobody says. You don't care what nobody's doing. All you thinking about is being happy and making yourself happy. So when you forgive, you're able to live, and you're able to live a happy life.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It makes you stronger. I promise you.
Yes, indeed. Anything else? Anybody else got anything else before we get out? All right, Miss Sherri, you know, I sure do appreciate you for coming in, tapping in with us today.
I love y'all. You know, anytime y'all call on me, you know I'm gonna be there, because it needs to be said, it needs to be done, it needs to be, and I appreciate you for everything that you're doing and with Make a Chess Move and all of this arts of storytelling, because it needs to be done, it needs to be said, it needs to be heard. And I thank you guys so much for allowing me to have this privilege to even speak.
Thank you again. Thank you again. All right, y'all just tuned in to another episode. We're gonna keep it tomorrow. Thank you again, Miss Sherri. Y'all have a good one.
I love y'all.
Love you too.
Take care.
Love you too.
Wait, Phil, we forgot to snap. Whoa.
Hold on, we forgot our snaps. Hold on, yeah, you forgot our snaps. Thank you. You know, every day when we do our session, I usually count to 3, and we all snap at the same time. All right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Boom.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Peace out. Peace out.
I'll talk more next time, brother.
Peace out.